This is my tackle box, and I don't use it for fishing. This is what I use to store and carry around all of the tools and supplies that I use the most on my model railroad. And I'm going to open it up and we're going to go through it today. Hey everybody, I'm Jimmy. My coffee today is Joffrey's French Bistro Blend, and this is Coffee and Trains. This video is brought to you with support from my patrons on Patreon. These videos would not be possible without them, and if you'd like to join the Patreon community, you can follow the link in the description below and join for as little as $1 a month. This video is going to be broken up into several parts. I've got 3 different groups of hand tools for fine things like that, some power tools, and then some supplies. So that's how we're going to be broken up, and we're going to go ahead and dive right into the hand tools. And what I want to start with is the cutting tools that I use the most. The cutting tools I use the most are these right here. I'm going to just hold them all up right here. Now let's start off with the first one, which is a good utility knife right here. This is a great thing to have. You can cut foam with it. You can do all sorts of things with it. You can work on models with it. A lot of things that you can use this with. You can buy just the cheap dollar ones you can find, or you can get one like this where you have an all metal body and you can replace the blades. But a utility knife is a good thing to have. And just along that same vein, when you need to do a little bit more finer work, a good hobby knife is really good to have. You need to be really careful with these, by the way, because these are really sharp. I have pricked myself so many times with this little hobby knife right here. But a good hobby knife is another one to have. And then once we get into the cutting tools, one that I use a whole lot is a little set of nippers, as you can see right here. You can find these just about anywhere. Matter of fact, if you have a 3D printer, a lot of times you get these free. The good set of nippers is something that is really, really good to have. And then last but not least, in terms of the cutting tools, we have a really good set of wire strippers right here. Now this goes all the way from 10 gauge to 20 gauge, and then it also has a blade, and then a few other little spots right here. And this is just a really, really good tool. This is actually the one you get from Harbor Freight, so it's really not that expensive. So good set of wire strippers is something good to have. Now we're going to move on to the brushing and kind of surface treatment section of it, and we're going to start off with some of these big old brushes right here. Now, I actually don't use these for painting. I really use these more for cleaning. These are really good. They're really stiff bristle brushes for cleaning, but I've actually had ones like this and the smaller version of this, like a 1-inch brush, that are really good for dry brushing as well. They're really good at wicking away the paint and holding a certain amount. So for cleaning and dusting and dry brushing, these types are really, really good. Kind of my all-purpose cleaning up brushes are these, about this size. These are 1-inch paint brushes, and these are just really good. They're not a stiff bristle, but you can find these just about anywhere. You can just buy these in packs, and this is something that I use a whole lot just for cleaning and neatening up a scene, especially when I'm putting down scenery material like I am with ballast or something like that. I'm using brushes like this. And let's see here, another one that I use a whole lot is foam brushes. Now you may be thinking foam brushes like this one. Yes, I use these a ton. I buy them in bulk and I just use them. I use them a lot for glue applications and I throw them away. But then there's also these types of foam brushes, which little bit smaller of a head. You can actually get micro brushes, which have a little tiny foam tip on them. But foam brushes are another really great one that I use a lot of. And then for actual painting, I really love stiff bristle brushes like this. Very, very stiff. You can really, it's really forgiving for how much work you can do with it, and you can really direct where paint goes, which is why I love stiff bristle brushes. And in terms of the last one that I like to have, I like to just buy these I almost buy these by the pound. Just these super cheap little tiny brushes. You probably use these in school just for painting things, but these are just dirt cheap little brushes that you could buy and do stuff with. Now, for all the other things for like treating surfaces and that kind of stuff, one thing I recommend is getting you a good set of small files. Now this is just 2 of my whole set right here, but files are a really good thing to have, especially when you're working on things like grade crossings and clearances and you've got just a little bit of extra that you need to get off. Files are really, really good for that. They're really good for really tiny work, especially ones like this where it's got a little, it's a kind of a pyramid triangular and it goes into a cone and has a little point right there. These are really good for doing a little bit of work and taking the edge off without worrying about taking off too much. And then another thing that I honestly cannot remember where I got these. I think I got these at just like one of the hobby craft stores, but these are little sanding sections, and what they do is basically they have a section of sand. They have a whole like pad of sandpaper, and you can just when you've used it up, you can just rip it off, and you've got a fresh piece of sandpaper. And this doesn't say what grit it is, but these are really great. I use these to grind up my pastels when I do weathering. So this is something that you can use a lot, and it's great just to have around, and it fits really well in a toolbox versus just a regular piece of sandpaper. So those are my paint brushes and surface modifying tools. Really love all of those. Okay, now for my general use tools. The first thing I'm going to say is get yourself a set of tiny screwdrivers. Now this is just 3 of my set, but get yourself a good set of tiny screwdrivers, because at some point you're going to need these for a model railroad. So set of tiny screwdrivers is a great thing to have. Next up, another thing that you're about guarantee you're going to need at some point in model railroading is some tweezers. Now I have several sets of tweezers, but getting yourself a good set of tweezers that you're comfortable with is definitely going to help you out with your model making, and you're definitely going to need these at some point in your model railroading. And another thing that I really love and has really helped me out a ton, you're actually going to see me using it in Monday's video a lot, is a pin vise. Pin vices are basically these tiny little hand drills that you can put bits in, and they basically just hold the bit, and you can hand crank them, and you can get really tiny bits for these. And you've seen me use this on a lot of different things. But these things are really great. They're not expensive, but pin vise, great for holding little tiny drill bits and things like that. And the last thing of my general tools that I really love to use are these 3-2-1 blocks. These things are hefty, by the way. These are made of steel. But basically, these are very good for weighing things down and getting square edges. And also, my set has some bolts that come through right here that you can attach multiple ones together if you need to get a right angle and need to glue something. These are great for holding models in place while you glue them. These are great for holding things down while the glue is setting. So 3-2-1 blocks, another great thing to have in your model kit. Okay, for my 2 power tools that I use the most, definitely gotta have my cordless drill, my 18-volt drill. Right now it has a 1/4 inch bit in it because I was drilling through and doing some wiring over there. But a good drill is something you're going to use a lot of, especially to get wires through boards and things like that. So a good cordless drill is something that is it's pretty much just essential for a model railroad nowadays. So the other thing that I just got it actually, but I really love it and I've used it like crazy already, is the Woodland Scenics Hobby Vac. And this little thing, basically what it is I've actually got some material stuck in there right now. It basically has, this is the vacuum right here, and then this is a little tube. It's got a little screw right here. And basically it's got a little button. And it also has an LED, so you can see what you're doing. Basically, it'll suck the material up into this little area, so if you need to, let's say you're doing static grass and you need to suck static grass off, you can suck it in right here and you won't lose it. So you can collect it all and then reuse it. So the only thing is that it's one of these triggers, so if you have some material and you go into here, it's going to dump back out. So I like having a little cardboard box that I can just, you hold it up like this, you dump it, take it back, and then I start the vacuum, and then I go. So this is a great tool for cleaning up your model railroad. Makes it a lot easier. Runs off just a 9-volt battery. Before we get into the supplies that I use the most, real quick, I want to hit on the coffees that you guys are drinking. Chris Jones says that he's drinking Joffrey's Mickey Brew that his kids got him for Christmas. I do love me some Joffrey's coffee. Dan Summers says that he's currently drinking Kickstart Coffee's Elgon Roast. That sounds really good. And Wicked Seafood says that he's drinking Folgers Black Silk with Italian Sweet Cream. Those all sound delicious. Remember, if you want to tell me what coffees you guys are drinking, put a comment down below. Let's get into the supplies that I use now. Let's start off with some of the base stuff that I use. So the first thing let's talk about is glues. I use white glue, and you're going to look and say, hey, this is a very, very beat up bottle of school glue. That's because these bottles are actually really, really great for applying. So I just can tend to reload and reuse them. I go through glue by the gallon. You can see this is the size glue that I buy, and I'm on my second gallon on this layout. So I go through a lot of glue. I just reload the bottles, and sometimes I'll pour straight from there, but I just reload the bottles and reuse them. And then when I need to do some other gluing of other things, such as plastic parts and things like that, I'll use super glue like this, which is Star Bond's Gap Filler Thick. It's very thick viscosity super glue, so it's fairly easy. It doesn't run everywhere. I do have thin viscosity super glue, but this works really, really well. Now on to some of the scenery materials that I use. I use a lot of scenic foams, which are also turf, so like Woodland Scenics. I have my fine turf right here, and I have my blended turf. So this is basically one thickness of the turf level, and then this is kind of a mixture of it right here. But Woodland Scenics, I buy it by the shaker. I'm probably gonna have to buy another one before the layout's done. And then in terms of ballast, I will sometimes use Woodland Scenic, sometimes I'll use Scenic Express, but I use fine ballast for InScale. This is just their fine gray ballast, and again, it's another shaker right here, but this is what I'm using to ballast my whole layout right here. I'm not modifying it in any way. If you need to modify the color a little bit, you can put some weathering powder in there. If you need a very specific weathering powder, you can check out Arizona Rock and Mineral. They have ballasts for specific railroads, and I've actually used those before. I used them on MRR1. And another thing that I use a lot is just the simple old acrylic paints, just the cheap paints that you buy at, you can buy these at Walmart, apple barrel paints, things like that, but these are like at most $2 a bottle. Most time they're less than $1 a bottle. But these are the paints that I use the most, hands down. And then I also, to dilute my glue and to get it to stick, I use isopropyl alcohol, and I have actually two separate containers that I apply it in. One is a spray bottle like this. This is just a little mister bottle. Picked it up for like 80 cents, and it's loaded with some IPA right there, and I'll just mist it. And if I need a more directed approach, I use condiment bottles like this. You can see it still has a little bit in there right there, and this is what I use to apply that IPA. And when I make my scenic cement, because I make my own, I just take some white glue and I mix it either 50-50 or 30-70 white glue water. So that'd be 50 white glue, 50 water, or 30 white glue, 70 water, depending on what I'm using to apply the glue. If I'm using a sprayer, I'll thin it out a little bit more. So those are all of my tools, my supplies that I use the most. I want to hear what you guys use the most. Put that in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is 1 year of coffee and trains. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.